なんだこいつは。ゴジラってやつじゃ。なんだそれ。島のやつがそう言ってたんだ。今日みたいに深海魚がいるときはゴジラが来るって。ゴジラ。
Hey, yo, how's it going, friends? It's Shawn the Butcher here once again with Vertebrae33 for a very special, brand new episode, number 30, or as Vertebrae was calling it, episode 31 minus one. Get it? This is the premiere podcast in Madness Pod. How's it going, Vertebrae?
How are you, Shawn? We've had a lot of technical difficulties leading into this, but we are here and we're able to record. And, you know, this movie we're about to do is going to send us all on a ride. It is not Back to the Future, despite what somebody guessed. And this is one we wanted to do for a while, and we've talked about a million times. Are you ready?
I'm very ready. Make sure you follow us on all of the socials. As you can see on our nice mug. First off, that was going to be the last thing I got to. Vertebrae's drinking out of his Godzilla mug. So if you're watching us on YouTube, we have updated our video to look a little better than it used to. You could follow us on all the socials, as you can see now on our YouTube at In Madness Pod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads. Oh, we didn't put the Threads. It's all right. I could just say Threads. We got the three main ones up there. Hit us in the mail sack, inmadnesspod@gmail.com. We're going to be reading your emails on the next couple of episodes. We're probably going to cover a few things and then end each show with an email. Make sure you hit us in the mail sack, subscribe to the YouTube page, give us the 5-star reviews and the likes and the comments. We have the In Madness Spotify playlist where you can hear music that is brought up. I wonder what songs I'm going to see if I could find the original songs from this movie. Hopefully they've released the soundtrack and I can add them to the In Madness Spotify playlist that already has like 4.5 hours of music, everything themed around all of the episodes we have been doing for the past year plus. Happy In Madness Monday. If that's when you're listening, tell your friends about this podcast. Spread the madness worldwide. And if you want your cool ass In Madness shirt, go to inmadness.com. Do you have the vinyl for this movie, Vertebrae?
I do. It's right behind me.
Very cool.
Standing up right behind me. If you're looking on YouTube, you can see it. It's a beautiful 2-record set, and it's fantastic. It's this blue, like kind of baby bluish vinyl, almost like the ocean water with like other specks in it. It's very cool. We'll pull pictures.
We will be posting it on all of our socials. I can't begin to describe how excited I am that we have arrived at this day covering a Godzilla movie. It was one of the first things I wanted to do when we said we were going to start doing this podcast. I couldn't wait to dive into all of them. 1954, 85, 2016, which was the hints that I gave on our previous episode. Usually we do things chronologically, but this is very special. I love the Godzilla fever that everyone has currently been under. And I love that this movie was created and got rave reviews and won awards. I was able to see it at the premiere at the Japan Society in New York City, which was amazing. Shout out to my man Glenn for hooking that up. I saw it again with my girlfriend. This will be my third watch and deep dive and full review into this movie that we are doing for episode 30 of In Madness Pod. Vertebrae, everyone knows. Maybe Back to the Future guy doesn't. Would you like to let everybody know what episode 30 of In Madness Pod is?
So finally, we get to Godzilla Minus One. And I say finally, this is a movie that came out January 26, 2024. So we've done a lot of movies that are 30 years old. But the finally on this one is this kind of one that defines our podcast a little bit. And this was, we were headed in another direction as far as the next film goes. And then out of nowhere, Netflix drops this film on everybody. And everybody loses their minds once again on this amazing movie. It's written, directed, and the visual effects are supervised by Takahashi Yamazaki, who's been a filmmaker for over 24 years. And I'm going to say I got that name correct, but I'm probably going to struggle with some of the names in this movie. So I apologize in advance for that. The score, which I have, is composed by Naoki Sato, and he's done a bunch of scores for anime series and films series. He's done Eureka 7, Sword of the Stranger, Pretty Cure series. So he's already very well known. And just for clarity, because I think, Shawn, we should clear some stuff up before we get into this film, just kind of because there's a lot of Godzilla out there in the world right now. So if you're listening to us, and sometimes we get people that listen and maybe watch these films for the first time because of it, this is the Toho version of Godzilla and not the American MonsterVerse version. And Shawn is the expert, so he's going to be able to point all of this stuff out, and I'm hoping he has some Easter eggs that I don't have as we go along. This Godzilla film franchise consists of 38 films. 33 of them are Japanese produced, and the other 5 are American produced films by Legendary Pictures in their MonsterVerse universe. So this movie comes out, and just before we get into all the particulars of who's in it and everything, you already noted, it takes the world by storm, wins an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, which is kind of cool because the director is also the one who did the visual effects. It cost $15 million to make. Okay, $15 million. So if we want to gauge this, another film in that category for best visual effects is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Can you guess, Shawn, how much that cost?
365 million.
All right, so you went high, but 250 million. Crazy. 15 million. And there's a really cool, it's maybe because the disc didn't come out for this and it was just a Netflix drop, we don't get all the extras that we get. So I feel like we're going to talk about this movie again because we don't get it. There's even a sort of making of book, but it's only in Japanese. They've done quite a few products that are only in Japanese. So maybe we'll get one eventually because it's so successful. But they talk about in that documentary the fact that he is the end all be all of it. If you have the director guiding the visual effects, if Yamazaki is guiding it as they go along, they can move much quicker on things. They had a good amount of their team on the same floor. In the video, they show him in a chair, wheeling from desk to desk in the office. And I'm sure they set that up to look really cool, but that's easy for him to do that and approve shots. It seems like people worked extremely hard on this. I think one of the guys that worked on it was kind of perfecting water effects in his spare time, and brought it in to show them, and they were amazing, and this is what we're going to do. So all the stuff that's on those big ships they're not actually on any of those ships, and they're just on moving platforms, and it's all green screen, and it looks amazing. And we'll get into how the creature looks and everything. It was also out in black and white. They released it in the theaters in black and white for a little while too. So it had a short run. I think we talked about it in an earlier episode, just because the American film was coming out. But this gets tremendous praise, and I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm gonna turn it over to Shawn in a minute because Shawn's got a lot to say about this movie. I know it. Spielberg goes nuts for this movie, goes up to Yamazaki at an event and says, "Oh, you're the director of Godzilla. I saw it 3 times. I saw it at home, I saw it at IMAX, and then I had to see it with Dolby Atmos." Christopher Nolan goes on and on about how amazing this film was. He thought it was so exciting, so beautifully made. And then the depth of the issues he mentioned that are around this film, and kind of works as a 1-2 punch with Oppenheimer in a way too, which people have pointed out online. And then lastly, that at least as far as I have, is Gareth Edwards, who did the 2014 reboot of the film of Godzilla, which I liked a lot. And he said he felt jealous the whole time he was making and watching the movie, and he was like, "This is what a Godzilla movie should be." So huge praise for this movie. It takes everybody by storm. I think it would have made even more money if they didn't take it out of the theater so quickly. We get into the cast. Shawn, I don't know. I'm going to struggle with a lot of these names.
So I break it down. We got our main character, Shikishima.
Mm-hmm.
We have his lady, Noriko.
Yes.
We have the baby, who I just call the baby, even though she's Akiko. It's just easy to remember the baby. The whole boat crew, I just call them the captain, the doc, and the kid to just keep things easy.
Right.
And Tachibana and
We have the neighbor,
the neighbor,
Ota, Sumiko, right?
Somiko. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not, I don't, out of respect, I'm not going to try to read the actors' names because I think I'm going to just butcher them in this. I was literally practicing and I was like, I'm not getting any of these right. I have to, if you say it a lot and you hear like Shikishima, over and over again in the film, you start to kind of get it. But it's an amazing cast. I will say that the little girl who plays Akiko, what an amazing job that little girl does. What an incredible performance by such a small child. And all of them do. There's also this on Netflix. If you haven't watched it yet, do not watch the dubbed version of this. Right, Shawn?
Watch it even says when you go to subtitles, original, and the Japanese version, like, watch. That's the one that we are doing for this episode, because apparently, so what I've seen on Twitter, they like I misinterpret or change some of the dialogue in English, and it's not, just watch it with the subtitles and read it the way that it's supposed to be actually delivered.
Mm-hmm. And as far as reference for him, obviously tons of film for him to reference when he makes this, but he particularly cites King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, as an influence on it. I have not seen that film. I've not seen a lot of the Godzilla films, and it was one of the main ones that he drew inspiration from. And it's saying because that's a more evil version of Godzilla. And once we start the movie, we can talk about those differences. I'm hoping you can help me. I have plenty of notes, but because it's not my world that we're in and it's yours, I want to make sure I get it correct. I will say one cool Easter egg at the beginning is Shikishima's first name is Koichi, I think, and that shares the first name of the same guy who did the special effects coordinator for the Godzilla films from 85 to 95. So that's really cool. And then his last name is the first air squadron to carry out the kamikaze attacks in World War II.
Whoa.
So that's a crazy connection, and tons of weight in this movie. I'll really tell you how much I love this movie as we go along, Shawn.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different phases of Godzilla. Like you said, there's the Toho and there's the MonsterVerse. I just consider it like the Japanese made and the American made. Japanese made is always the superior Godzilla movie. I mean, they created the sauce. You can't just remix the sauce and sell it in the American market and think it's going to be as good. It's not going to happen. For a while, I mean, when I started watching Godzilla, he was, in my mind, the bad guy. But like when you watch the films, you realize he's this tragedy created through the follies of man. But like in the movies, he is a bad guy. He's killing people. He's the badass, whatever. And then they flip that and they're like, oh my God, we can make him the good guy and we can make a million of these movies. And a lot of those movies are very good. Godzilla vs. Megalon, Godzilla vs. Terror of Mechagodzilla, who I got the Mechagodzilla shirt on. There are a lot of great versions of the good guy Godzilla as well. What I love about the Shin Godzilla from 2016, and which has a lot of similarities to this one, Godzilla Minus One, is that it kind of brings it back to the roots of like, he is the bad guy. He's not the villain, but like he is destroying and people are dying, even though he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have any intentions of doing this. He's just this mindless sort of creature floating about looking for either another or food or whatever it's on the hunt for. They never seem to know.
Yeah, he's total complete badass in this movie. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that this is my favorite Godzilla movie of all time. And I know people will be like, oh, I just saw something, so it's my favorite, or this player in the sport is the best of all time. It just connects with me the most. And that's not taking anything away from the original. I love the original, but it's filmed in 1954, so it carries itself differently, and I like it to as like a fine wine, and it's really good. But this film just I'm not as into the shticky stuff as other people are. and I know that there's part of like Godzilla kind of lives in that weird world where it's kind of, and they make the cartoons and they do all that, but this one hits on all the right notes for me. And it even, I mean, Shawn, would you say it's kind of like a remake of the original in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I mean, in ways, I feel like it's a prequel to the original.
Mhm.
The
And
original came out in 1954, which makes this the 70th anniversary of Godzilla as well.
yes, and I'm gonna do something really quick before we jump into the movie. I'm gonna read the titles to all the Godzilla films, and I want you to tell me whether you like them, whether you don't like them,
I
or
haven't seen
if
all of
you've
them,
seen
but
or if you've seen them or not
yeah,
seen them. So let's play
of
this game
course.
really
Yeah,
quick,
I love
okay?
it. I love it.
All right. Godzilla 1954,
Done.
obviously.
Done.
Godzilla raids again in
Yep. Yep.
55.
Yep. Yep.
King Kong versus Godzilla in 62.
I have it on VHS.
64, we get Mothra versus Godzilla
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep.
Ghidorah, the
Yep.
three-headed monster.
Yep. Yep.
Invasion of Astro Monster in 65.
Yep.
That's a good
Correct.
one.
Uh-huh.
Okay. 66, we get Ibira Horror of the Deep.
The lobster, yes, the giant lobster, yes.
Oh, wow. So we get to number 8. We get Son of Godzilla in 1967.
Good villains. It had oh man, the big green guy. I forget his name. He had like bubbles on his back. It'll come to me eventually.
Mm.
But that I enjoyed the villain, and it's like there's like a bully. I don't know if it's that one, but there's like a bully bullying the kid, and there's a monster bullying baby Godzilla, and they like come together and figure out their problems. This is when Godzilla starts getting really shticky.
Yeah. Destroy All Monsters in 68.
Hey, it's all right. It's all right.
Just All Monsters Attack in 69.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same era of the DVD book that I
Yeah.
have. So yeah, 100% I've had.
Godzilla versus Hedorah in 71.
That's the smog monster. Hedorah's a badass, legendary Godzilla villain.
Godzilla versus is it Gigan?
Gigan.
Gigan.
Yes.
Godzilla versus Gigan,
Good,
72.
good movie, but I'll when you get to it, I'll explain.
Okay, Godzilla versus Megalon in 73.
This is the one. So this is the part to explain. Godzilla vs. Gigan, not a great movie. Godzilla vs. Megalon, great movie. I have it on VHS. What I love about it is Gigan comes to help Megalon, and they do a tag team, and they fight Godzilla and Jet Jaguar, and it's great. That's the one where if you've probably seen the GIF of Godzilla doing the slide on his tail drop kick thing.
Yeah,
that's from that movie. Great movie.
Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla in 74.
Like our buddy John Bellotti Jr. said, not a great one.
Okay. Terra of Mechagodzilla in 75.
One of the best Godzilla movies ever. That's based off this shirt right here.
Wow.
Mechagodzilla, one of the
and classics. That one I've seen. So I didn't name which ones I saw and didn't see because honestly, like what's that channel? Is it Pluto that has the Godzilla channel? So I'll put that on sometimes to just have it on. So if you have it on for like 5-6 hours when you're doing something, they start to kind of all run together. And I know there was ones with like people from space and all this other crazy stuff going on. Okay, so then we get a break from 75 to 84. There's not a film, which is crazy. And then in 84, you get the Return of Godzilla.
Excellent. One of my all-time. That's my top 5.
89. So we get another 5-year break now. Godzilla versus Biolante.
Yeah, it's like this big flower like plant monster. Good movie. Okay. So this is when it kind of changes because there's like the Heisei era and there's the there's two.
So this is the Heisei era and the other one was what they call the Showa era. So I should have said that. So we're in the Heisei era right now. Okay, so we get Godzilla versus King Ghidorah in 1991.
Can't fuck with it. Unbeatable.
Godzilla versus Mothra in 92.
Yep.
Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 in 93.
So this is where I start. There's a bunch of the Heisei era that I have not seen where King Ghidorah becomes like a Mechagodzilla King Ghidorah. I haven't. There's a handful of these that I have not seen. Okay,
which is interesting because they call it Mechagodzilla 2, but Terra of Mechagodzilla came after Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. So that's an interesting way to do that. Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, 94.
It's a very famous one, but I have not seen it.
We should watch one of these you haven't seen together. That would be fantastic. Godzilla versus Destroyer.
Yeah, that's when like I think Godzilla's like glowing red,
All
I
right.
think. Or
This is
no, Destroyer might be the horned thing. I have not, again, these are all ones that I really have
Y-
not seen.
You know what's hilarious? I think I was in a conversation with somebody once, and they were telling me about that movie, and they had like just a New York accent. So I thought it was Destroyer, and they were just saying Destroyer.
Destroyer. Yeah.
All right, so we hit the Millennium era. So we get Godzilla 2000 Millennium in 1999.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw that one.
Okay, and then in the year 2000, we got Godzilla versus Mega Gyrus.
No.
Okay,
So yeah, these I don't know.
2001. 2001 Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, giant monsters all out attack.
Yeah, this is when I slip out.
Yeah,
Was just kind of watching the 50s, 60s,
yeah.
and
Then we
70s and
get
80s.
2002 Godzilla against Mechagodzilla.
Nah, I don't know these.
2003 Godzilla Tokyo SOS.
No.
And then Godzilla in 2004, Godzilla Final Wars.
That I've
Right?
seen parts of, and that kind of has all of the villains from all the Godzillas. I think they kind of
Right.
all fight each other.
Okay, so then we get what's the Reiwa era from
Mhm.
2016 to present. So we get Shin Godzilla,
Yep, classic, top 5.
Godzilla Planet of the Monsters in 2017,
Oh, I don't know if I saw that.
Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle in 2018,
I don't know what these are.
and Godzilla the Plant Eater in 2018.
I've never heard of these.
Yeah. So, and then we get Godzilla Minus One. So 2018 is the last Toho films they make. They take a 5-year hiatus, and in the meantime, in between there, the Americans pick up. So we get the American films, which are Godzilla in 1998, the Roland Emmerich one, the often criticized
Despised. Yeah.
as that baby eggs in MSG or whatever that is, right?
Yep.
And then we get a relaunch. So 1998, that happens, and 16 years go by before Americans decide to touch Godzilla again. And we get the Gareth Edwards one in 2014, which I really
Okay.
enjoyed.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I thought it was visually really well done. And I remember that trailer being incredible too, with the red smoke and all that.
Yep.
And then we get Godzilla King of Monsters in 2019,
I enjoyed it.
which is a Michael Dougherty film. Isn't that Michael Dougherty? Isn't he also the guy who
Krampus.
Yeah, yeah. Trick or Treat, I think, too, right? So there
Yep.
he is. He's coming back. Godzilla versus Kong in 2021.
I enjoyed it. A little wacky.
Mhm. And then Godzilla versus Kong, The New Empire, which just came out.
I didn't love it. A little too wacky for me. You want to talk
Right.
about shticky? It doesn't get any shtickier than that for me.
Yeah. And then you get um there's some weird like localized releases, versions of things, American versions of Japanese films and all that stuff, which we don't have to get into. But we have given them a lot of shite in the beginning. So if you're that guy who hated us on YouTube, you've tuned out a long time ago. And if you stuck around, we appreciate it. But I needed this to have some breadth and weight to it because of the film that it is. I know it's a long film, but I thought that was important. Let's do this, Shawn.
So we're on a large body of water. A plane flies headfirst into an island. It lands. There's a bomb under the plane. The pilot looks pretty stressed. On the screen, we see the year is 1945. So this is 10 years before, 9 years before the first movie comes out in 1954. We are on Odo Island. And in the 1954 movie, Odo Island, the villagers there were the ones who telling the legend of Godzilla. We're in the final days of World War II. There's a bunch of men working on the pilot's plane. They tell their boss there's nothing wrong with the engine or the fuel line. They shoot him a glance like, what is up with this dude? We have our pilot, Shikishima, and the head mechanic, Tachibana. He was a mechanic at the Naval Air Corps. He says they were there at the same time. The pilot tells him he owes them and his men. The mechanic says their landing strip sucks because of all the holes, but the pilot landed safely. He tells him he hasn't lost his touch. Shikishima says training for dogfights was simple, but it's different in a real kamikaze. So the dude was a kamikaze pilot who bailed from the mission.
Right. And this is a big weight in this film. We're heading into the end of World War II. I'm going to click in at certain points for some kind of history dates that I wrote down so people can get a perspective on this film. But kamikaze pilots, they acted out like what were considered, suicide attacks. They would, crash their planes directly into warships. And, if you're approaching the end of the war and it's about over, you really start to think, should I follow through with this or not? And this is a big weight of this. About 3,800 kamikaze pilots died during the war, and more than 7,000 naval personnel were killed by kamikaze attacks. So it's this theme carries a weight, and as does government and being involved in a war and all of that. But what a beautiful shot when he comes in on the runway with all the holes. Presumably it's been bombed a little bit, so there's kind of those holes in the runway. But yep.
Tachibana tells him he's lucky to be able to rest now. It's strange. His men looked all over the plane and no one could pinpoint the issue. The pilot gets offended and walks off angrily. Has himself a sip by the water. The mechanic approaches and tells him he's on his side. They need more people like him. He doesn't see the point. They know how the war is going to end, so why die honorably now? The pilot looks into the water and we see a bunch of these dead bulbous fish floating around.
Mm-hmm. Those always they confused me until I realized that they're just normal fish and that their insides have popped out of their mouths due to decompression from being brought to the surface so quickly. So we
Keep that in
already
mind.
get everything matters in this movie. I've said it before, but he does an amazing job. This matters. At first, I didn't know what these fish were. I was like, they look so weird.
Yeah, I never
like
saw
these
a
big
fish like
heads or something, but they're like turned inside out and popping up for that reason. So we'll get to that theme later.
It's nighttime. Shikishima's walking around, and the air raid sirens go off. The men freak out. Go get the guns. They ask if it's a raid. No one knows. We can't see. It's too dark. Is it the damn Americans again? And we hear it. The iconic, legendary Godzilla roar. Do you know how this was created, Vertebrae?
Yes. Yeah.
You
So
want to tell the kids?
They didn't create a new roar. They opted to play the Godzilla roar through real speakers on the set, which got the actors to kind of get into it. And then they kind of added more to it, but they used the original 1954 signature sound, which was created by rubbing a rubber glove along the strings of a double bass. That's the original sound that was created. And then they emulated it, and they also had it on set. Did I get that right?
Beautiful. Perfect.
Yeah.
Poetic.
Yeah.
The men hear the roar. They're frozen in fear. We hear rustling. They scream to turn on the spotlight. The man in the watchtower shines the light. He moves it to the right. Which, my friends, brings me to my milking of the alpacas moment.
This brings me to my first one. I'm not gonna lie, Shawn.
You did the missed milking of the alpacas. 10 milking of the alpacas.
I think I have 4 of them. This is my first one.
I was gonna do that, and I was like, no, you did it for the mist. If you haven't checked out our mist episode, I have like 20 milking of the I agree. This movie has many, but yes, 4 minutes, 29 seconds in, and there he is, Godzilla. Dare I say baby Godzilla? Dare I say smaller looking Godzilla? Only maybe dinosaur size, not much bigger.
Right. And he's obviously they've mentioned it, right? He's been around. I'm watching this movie for the first time. I was able to avoid spoilers, or if I had heard things, I kind of forgot them before it drops on Netflix. I'm in my living room and this happens, and I audibly gasped. He is so badass in this scene. So evil. It's so out of nowhere. And when you get into the scene, the things he does are just so mean and nasty. There's no like bum bum bum, and I'm strolling by slowly and people are in the distance running away. This is a full-on assault by him right away. Complete
he looks
badass.
Phenomenal. Skin is all spiky. It looks like armor. This is definitely in the top 4 of my Godzilla favorite designs. This fucker is tearing ass through Odo Island, and he is pissed. He heads right over to the light tower. He knocks that bitch down. They're like, what the hell is it? One of the men says, it's Godzilla. One of the locals told me. When the fish float, Godzilla is near. They look over and this dude stomps on the tower. It explodes under his foot. He screams that glorious roar into the sky, and this goddamn spittle slime is dangling off of every one of his teeth. It is marvelous. Tachibana says, we're done for, and screams for the men to get to the bunker. He tells Shikishima to go for his plane, shoot it with the plane guns. He's the only one who knows how. And Shikishima's like, nah, what if it just pisses it off even more? Tachibana says the plane's guns will kill it. Shikishima reluctantly heads to the plane. He jumps in, he grabs the gun lever, and this beautiful bastard Godzilla stops right in front of him. Perfect, clean shot, and Shikishima is shaking in his boots, frozen. Tachibana says, what does he need, an invitation? I love this dude's humor. Shikishima's frozen in terror. He does not fire. Godzilla approaches the men. One of the men shoot, and now the shit is on.
And okay, Shawn, you're in this situation, and they're like, yeah, you go and shoot. I think part of it is because, like, hey, he was a kamikaze pilot, so one, he could fly a plane and he can shoot on a plane. We know that already, but really, they don't know at this point if he can shoot well. They just know he can crash his plane. He's been trained to like crash his plane and stuff. So like, hey, if somebody's got to sacrifice themselves, it should be you. Go get in your plane and shoot him. Like that's what it felt like. I'm sure those guys could have fired a gun. They work on the planes, right? They know the planes really well. And what a bad plan. Why do they stop? Like when he does what he does, he takes off. So why are they even stopping and hiding inside something? I just would have kept running until I couldn't run anymore.
For your life.
Right. Why you're stopping and they're like, no, shoot him, it'll be over. But the theme of this film gives us this first instance where we already it's a second instance, right? He was supposed to be a kamikaze pilot. He's supposed to sacrifice himself for the good of the war, for the good of his people. He doesn't. Now he has a second chance to step up, shoot. He doesn't. I think even if he shot him, he's dead, though. I think you just make him more angry and then everybody else dies. Like, I don't think there's a win there.
Tachibana yells for them all to cease fire. Nobody does. They all bail from the bunker, finally, like Vertebrae, and Godzilla stomps on the bunker. Mm-hmm. The men are scattered all about. One runs up to Tachibana, and for the first time I've ever seen in a Godzilla movie, he chomps on this dude and tosses his ass in the air. He stomps on another dude. He chomps and tosses this other guy. He squashes 3 dudes with his tail behind him. He uses it like a hammer and curls it up and slams it down on the floor. Tachibana is sitting there. He's destroying the entire base, and Tachibana is in total shock and disgust at what is happening. Shikishima is still in the plane, frozen in fear. One of the mechanics tells him to shoot Godzilla right up until he also gets chomped and tossed. And I do notice he's not eating these guys. So what the hell does he eat? Fish, radiation, whales, sharks? I don't know.
Well, at this point, he's not been radiated. So he's probably, whatever diet he's having in the ocean. I don't know. Imagine he's a vegetarian and he's just tossing the meat aside. He's got no interest in it. But yeah, he's just throwing them. That I like I said, I haven't seen all 38 Godzilla films, but I hadn't seen that before, where he's just plucking dudes and throwing, just tossing them away. That was pretty crazy.
Shikishima bails from the plane. Godzilla chomps on the plane like a chew toy, chucks it in the air, and sends it crashing below on Shikishima, who gets blasted to the floor, but he's okay. Godzilla lets out the glorious roar once again. He spit slime dripping from every tooth, flapping in the wind. It looks beautiful, and Shikishima blacks out.
And we get our first time in this film of multiple times that we're going to see Shikishima wake up. He's like the kid in the mist. He's asleep all the time in this movie. There's a bunch of times that he's waking up again. But a nice segue there, and then we're about to see the aftermath.
He wakes up. It's almost daylight. His plane is crushed. All the dead mechanics' bodies are lined up. Tachibana is dragging the last of the men over, telling them they didn't deserve this. You see Shikishima alive and approaches him angrily, pointing at the bodies. Look at this. Look at what you could have prevented. They're all dead because you didn't shoot, and shoves them to the floor. Cut to a boat, bunch of army dudes. Shikishima's on the boat, so is Tachibana. He stumbles over to him angrily and hands him a little package. Shikishima looks at the contents and is horrified.
Yeah, and I didn't get you don't get right away what that package is, but and also these soldiers are in bad shape, right? This guy's bumbling themselves, rocking back and forth. There's nobody. One, you didn't win, even if there is quote unquote winning when in a war like this, but you didn't win, so you're going home with your tail between your legs and away, and you don't know what you're coming home to because of how much destruction has taken place.
Crazy. You cut to December 1945. Tokyo is in ruins. The Hiroshima bomb dropped in August of 45, I believe.
Right. So I can go through a little bit of a timeline for you. So Tokyo 1945, 3 months after surrendered, they surrendered September 2nd, 1945. Germany had surrendered in May. So if we look at the timeline of this movie, when that guy goes over to talk to Shikishima about, hey, I understand we were already losing, that type of thing, you kind of get it, because at that point Germany probably had already surrendered, and you guys are just kind of hanging on. So Germany surrenders May 8th, 1945. The atomic bomb is dropped on after the atomic bomb is dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered on September 2nd. And then these fire bombings that takes place in Tokyo, when we get, you're looking at Tokyo, 60% of Tokyo went up in flames. And we hear that from them when you get there. And yeah, I thought I had the exact, what did you say the exact date was of the dropping the bombs?
I think August of 45, unless that's Shawn facts.
Shawn facts.
Huh. I should look it up. I thought I had it on my notes. Well, it had to have been, well, no, they surrendered September 2nd, 1945. So I think it's probably right before that. So yeah, it could be the end of August, right at September 1st or something, but right before that. Pretty brutal.
Shikishima runs up to a house in shock. There is nothing there. A woman asks, "Is that you?" This woman is Sumiko. She thought Shikishima was dead. "Weren't you a kamikaze pilot?" And then she becomes disgusted, tells him he has nerve to show his face, calls him a disgrace. "Take a look around and see what happened because of cowards like you. This dude has got it bad. Everyone is blaming him for everything." She says, "If you would have did what you were supposed to, I'd still have my kids." Woof.
Yeah, so August, just to jump back, August 6th and August 9th. So August 6th, August 9th. So they don't surrender until September 2nd, too.
Relentless.
So, yeah, and so I don't know when we see him land on that island, how far along this is and how bad a shape he knows they are.
He asks if his parents are alive. She says, "Everyone is dead. During the raids, fire came down the whole block. Your parents, my kids, they're all dead." Cut to later at night. Survivors are surviving however they can amongst the ruins, cooking. Shikishima is reading a note from his parents. It says, "Return to us alive. Isn't that what you wanted?" So sad. Dude is so conflicted.
Oh, and this is crazy. So we get all of this destruction, but like it's still where your house was. So we get people just perched up in the areas where their home was. So it's just a pile of rubble, but they're all like sitting amongst their home, quote unquote homes, but it's just the area where the house exists. And we see as time moves on how that changes. But it's so just very surreal looking. And this amount of destruction, you're like, how do you even begin? Like, how do you move all this stuff out of the way? How do you even begin to rebuild? Um, let alone like he's not currently employed too, right? So yeah, you had a house that might have been worth something and you have that piece of land, but you have nothing, right? So interesting.
Cut to a little market in the middle of the ruins. A man yells to stop the thief. Shikishima tries to intercept, but it's a lady who hands him a red item in her possession. She runs off as the men chase her. Shikishima is standing there holding a baby in his hands, and he's like, "Now what?" Dude's about to leave the baby alone in the middle of the market and thinks better of it and takes it. And out from a pile of rubbish pops the girl who was being chased and asks where the hell she was. She tells him it's his own fault for staying in the market. She had to wait for him to come outside because there's too many looky-loos in there. He's like, "You were watching me the whole time?" She said, "Yeah." She was waiting for him to finally come out. She asks why he didn't just leave the baby in the market. He says he couldn't. The girl becomes amused by this and chases after him. He begs her to buzz off. She says they'll die if he leaves them alone, but he doesn't seem to care. Cut to the three of them eating this milk soup or whatever it is. He says, when they're done eating, please leave. She jokes with the baby and says, hear that? He's so mean and scary, isn't he? He asks, where's her husband? Was he in the war? She doesn't have a husband. Who's the baby? She says, doesn't matter. And he's like, of course it does. During the air raids, her dying mother begged her to take the baby. He's like, you're not related. She's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, you're insane. You have no business taking care of this baby. She heads right into what's left of his house, and he's like, you're supposed to be leaving. But I asked the baby's name. It's Akiko, and the girl's name is Noriko. He tells her she's dressed like a beggar. She's like, am I supposed to be a whore? He says no, but they're all trying to survive, and he wouldn't think less of her if she was.
I think she says harlot, right?
Harlot, yeah.
Yeah.
He asks if she has family. She has none. They're probably all dead. She sees a little grave shrine he set up for his dead parents as well, and she says, you're alone now, too. Next to the shrine is the package he was given on the boat by Tachibana. It's this deep moment until he looks over again quickly at the girl and the baby, who are both laid, passed out in like an absolute snap of a finger instant.
Mm-hmm. That's how I fall asleep, Shawn.
Yeah, that's how my girlfriend falls asleep. And it takes me an hour to fall asleep. Shikishima gets up in a panic and he's like, you can't stay here, but they are knocked out. And he's like, you've got to be kidding me. And the camera fades. Next day, he heads out only to be intercepted by Sumiko, who's been spying. She wants to know the deal. Who's the girl and the baby? Now you think you're a saint? He says he didn't want them. She says, you didn't kick them out, though. It's too late to be hero. I see right through you. This lady is like Miss Carmody in The Mist.
In some ways, but really in a lot of ways, she's not. So she feels like it now, but
she does heel and face turns constantly.
I mean, listen, her family's been destroyed. She's all by herself. If culturally they're like, hey, if you would have done your job as a suicide bomber, you know, as a kamikaze pilot, maybe you wouldn't be in this situation. You could have at least stopped. You're not going to stop the bombs from dropping, but maybe you could have stopped the people that bombed, you know, Tokyo, where she lives. So, but you know, she's about to kind of change her tune right here.
She says, don't bother asking me for help. He goes to walk away, and immediately she's like, stop. Can the girl breastfeed? And he's like, she's not the child's mother. And now Sumiko is intrigued and becomes a little less of a bitch. And in the next shot, she's holding the adorable baby, playing with it, making little baby noises, and helping them out like she said she wouldn't do. She tells them if they keep feeding the baby this way, it will die. She says, you take a child in and have no idea how to care for it. What were you thinking? Now she's turning back to Miss Carmody a little bit. But she hands them both a sack. It's full of food. She tells them it's not for them. They can survive on anything. Use it to make gruel for the baby. And then she goes, there goes all of my prize white rice. So she's helping them, but she's being a real pain in the ass about it. She leaves and says, pain in the neck, those two. And they both bow and thank her.
Yeah.
Cut to March 1946. The three of them have formed a nice little family. She asks if he's found any work. He did, for some good money. It's got government backing. It pays well because he has to disarm mines planted during the war. It pays well because it carries risk. She tells him absolutely not. He just survived the war. He says he doesn't have a choice. They won't make it if nothing changes. The baby will starve. Noriko doesn't want him to, but he insists so they can buy powdered milk. Noriko still refuses. He tells her just because it's risky doesn't mean he'll die. It's not like the war. Besides, they use boats specially made to evade magnetic mines.
Right. And before we get to the next scene, so these mines, so disposal operations of these mines are 78 years after the war. They're still finding these mines. There was in October, I found an article from October 3rd, 2023, where they found some mines and had to, you know, destroy them. And the U.S. military is believed to laid more than 10,000 mines around, and then in the major ports, and about half of these were scattered in a certain area, and then they estimate that there's about 1,000 remaining at sea. So, and there's different types of mines, the ones that, and they'll explain it, get in contact with a vessel, things like that, and they can detonate. But this is kind of still an ongoing job. I don't know if, you know, people, they're still kind of finding them.
Insane. Cut to what specially made to evade magnetic mines means. There's Shikishima standing at the dock, completely stupefied, beyond belief, saying to himself, this is it? Specially made? And it's these little rinky-dink nothings of a boat made out of wood, beat to hell, and we meet our lovely crew. The big man, the captain, Akitsu, he comes out, asks if he's the new sharpshooter. He says yes. They ask if he's ex-Navy. He says he flew a fighter. They're wondering what the hell he's doing on a boat. We get our kid, our little guy, the kid, Mizushima. He asks if Shikishima saw any action. The captain says Shikishima is a military cast-off and worth nothing to them. Then we meet our charming doc, Noda, who asks Shikishima if he's disappointed with the boat. He says during the war, 60,000 mines of all sorts were laid in the water off the Japan coast. The ones to worry about are the American magnetic ones. If the boat was metal and went near it, kaboom. Hence this old wooden rinky-dink ass ship.
And this is awesome. I love these guys. I love this crew. We get certain parts in this film that have very sort of Spielberg Jaws feel to them. We get a little bit here. We'll get obviously get a huge nod to it later on in the film. But these guys are all it's just so cool. It just brings you in to the story when you meet them, and they all play their roles perfectly. And we're going to get the scientist who has like a magnificent head of hair, by the way. That's a pretty incredible. I would love a head of hair like that, but I just love meeting them. It has just a cool kind of hopeful vibe in face of everything that they've been through as a people. And then you have these guys, they're just trudging along like, all right, we have this job, we're gonna get paid well, and we have to do it. And I think it's really cool that he gets very quickly does he lose everything and his family, and he regains a little family, an impromptu family with a baby and Noriko, and now he's got this crew who becomes his family, and we'll see some kind of fun moments for them later on.
Noda introduces himself and says during the war he designed weapons for the Navy. Akitsu is the captain. He says to call the little guy Kid and the smart guy Doc, which is what we're going to do. Kid hates his nickname. He's way too old for that name. Akitsu says he's the greenest. He's the newest. So he's still Kid. Kid is mad he didn't get to fight in the war because he's too young. The captain tells him about their boats. The mines they are after are tethered to the seabed like balloons on strings. They run a cable between two boats with a cutter in the middle. They clip the tether and the mine floats to the surface. Then they hit it with their big ass gun. Da 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 da. Captain busts off about 50 shots and misses, and he says this one's a little bit squirrely. Shikishima wants to try. He says since the boat's rocking account for how the waves are moving the target, he pops off 5 shots and kablooey. Everyone is impressed. He learned how to shoot down fighters but never saw action, only simulation. The kid says you never saw action. He says I guess you're as green as me. Captain says learn how to fly a plane like him and we'll talk. And kid says if he fought in the war he'd have been useful. He wonders if only it had kept going, and angrily Shikishima grabs him and says don't say anything like that ever again. Kid says it was only a joke, and the captain slaps him on the brim of his cap and he says use your brain.
We get a playful moment the way he slapped him on the cap. We get that kind of reality moment in the middle, and we get the doc right before the doctor, the scientist. You call him a doc, but I guess he's scientist, I guess, and he's like woohoo, like when he hits it. So just like kind of a fun family vibe that they have going on here.
Cut to Shikishima asleep.
Aha! So we get the second time this dude's asleep.
He's awoke by the sound of pounding footsteps. He tears open his front door and there's men shooting, and splat, Godzilla's enormous footsteps on a dude right in front of him, who looks up, and there he is in all his glory, my man Godzilla. Shikishima lets out a horrified scream and awakes again from his nightmare.
Yeah. I didn't count the one inside the dream, but I could.
Noriko asks if he's all right. She makes him tea, which he drinks quickly. She asks if he had another nightmare. He's like, yeah, just a dream. What if you're a dream? Are we in Japan? Did I make it back alive? I came back, right? Poor dude thinks he's dreaming or dead. He's smothering Noriko, who shoves him off and looks at him worried. We see he knocked over the package he was given on the boat and a bunch of pictures spill out. Panicking, he says he knows he's alive. He knows he's not in a dream. Cut to July 1946, gigantic mushroom cloud explosion in the middle of the sea. Operation Crossroads, which I believe is where they lined up a bunch of military ships in the middle of the sea and blew them up with this nuclear bomb, which gave us like our iconic mushroom cloud picture, I think.
Yeah, so July 46, Bikini Atoll. Operation Crossroads paranuclear weapons test conducted by the U.S. And Shawn, I find this insane when you dive into this. So it's 1946. We've used the nuclear bomb twice already. And now we're continuing to test them. And I know we're headed into a Cold War with Russia, and there's kind of a standoff between countries in a lot of ways. But we're doing this 2,400 miles away from Japan in the North Pacific. Like, we just bombed them, and then we're still testing them. And the test of these were investigate the effects of nuclear weapons on warships. So in that picture, when you see it, you see all these ships in the water. What's crazy about this cloud, this mushroom cloud, is it doesn't look like Godzilla, but if you keep pausing it, it almost looks like like an evil snowman or something with a weird Johnny Rotten from PIL haircut on the top of his head. But I just think that if you put that in the space of history, like, that's a year later, we're not like upset that we dropped these bombs. We're still just out there testing them. And then if you think that this is only 78 years ago, right? Am I doing my math correct? Then I'm going to say 78 years ago that we're removed from this, that these situations took place. Like, Shawn and I, if you listen to this podcast, like, that situation in Tokyo afterwards, I don't think either of us are making it through that situation at all. It's just amazing that we're here recording a podcast and people are on their phones all the time and everything, and we're less than 80 years removed from people dropping nuclear bombs on people.
Insane.
Just wild.
During these bombings, we see Godzilla's eye under the water. The explosion is affecting him. It's almost tearing off his skin to a deeper sort of radioactive skin. We hear the iconic roar, and this creature is now seeming to absorb all of this nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm.
Cut to happier times. Sun is out, Noriko's hanging clothes, baby's walking, guys are on the boat blowing up mines. Very happy music in the background. Shikishima got him a motorcycle. They're starting to make some money. Noriko's teaching the baby how to read and write. Shikishima's looking at a small picture the baby made for him. And we see later on a light snowfall, the little house amongst the rubble that they have now turned into a home. Adorable.
Yeah, and this is a great, like, a sort of 80s montage, in a lot of ways, where they're on the boat training together and we're building his family, and things are about to get even more rough.
He's invited his buddies from the boat over to eat. They love his place. Doc's a photographer and takes a pic of Noriko at dinner. They tease Doc about falling for her. He says she's a married woman. She laughs and says she's not. And the men stare at Shikishima, who tells him she just showed up one day. She had nowhere to go, so he let her stay. And the baby, they ask? She brought her with her. They're not related. She was an orphan and Noriko took her in. Doc says they all found each other. That is a lovely story. This adorable baby looks at Shikishima and goes, "Daddy?" And he goes, "I'm not your father." And all the dudes at the table are like, "Woof, Jesus Christ, dude, what is wrong with you?" The captain tells him fate brought them together as families, so to accept it, the kid jokingly reaches out to give him a hug. All the men laugh, but Shikishima gets pissed. "Enough," he says. He doesn't want that. The captain asks, "Why not?" And the camera fades.
And listen, he's been through a lot. It's kind of mean. And not kind of mean, it's very mean when he's like, "Oh, I'm not your dad," this little kid. It's very mean. But you get a sense that he feels he's almost cursed, and in a lot of ways he is. Like, the Godzilla, like, torments the hell out of this guy. And meanwhile, like, he's upset about Godzilla, and Godzilla has no idea who he even is. It's just like ruining this guy's life. It's like somebody letting their shopping cart ram into your car in the parking lot, and they have no idea that it hit your car, but it ruins your day. Like, he's just continually ruining this guy's life, this guy's day. And he has no idea, but I feel like he's just trying to protect himself, from opening up too much. And he talks about it later on, but I thought that was pretty mean.
Yeah. We cut to March 1947. Shikishima returns to their much nicer home. Noriko is all dressed up and says she just got home as well. She went out and got herself a job. Shikishima asks if he doesn't provide enough. She wants to be self-sufficient. He'll never find a wife if she's always there. He pauses for a minute and wonders what will happen with the baby. Who's going to look after her? Of course, Miss Carmody, Sumiko, the nice devil lady. She's offered to take care for the child. She seems excited to offer. She raised her 3 kids who are now no longer with her, so she jumps at the opportunity to raise another child. Shikishima seems bummed, but he accepts it.
Mm-hmm. And she's getting a job in Ginza, right? Which is a neighborhood in Tokyo, if I get that correctly. So it's a nearby area in Tokyo. So, okay.
Cut the top secret government footage like Cloverfield, saying a Pacific Fleet destroyer was attacked, disabled by an unknown enemy. No further details are known at this time. We see a black and white photo of a ship destroyed. They have intercepted an urgent distress call from an attack sub reporting pursuit of massive organism through Pacific waters. We see a black and white photo of Godzilla's enormous backplates sticking out of the water. After the target was identified, the attack sub made contact and was destroyed. Recon picked up radioisotope emissions where the ship collided with the creature's skin. We see black and white photos of a sub just torn to pieces. We hear a man's voice say the colossal sea creature is expected to reach Japan within a few weeks. Its movement suggests it's going to one region specifically, Kanto. Recent Soviet movements are preventing any U.S. military assistance. Japan is told to strengthen their own security and prepare for attack with the beast. And the footage ends.
And Shawn, these are the t-shirts I want. I'm wearing a -1 shirt as we record right now, but I want like the ones with the charts and graphs. Like that would be cool. Like where you're tracking Godzilla's path, like the little like like across the lines
On the
I think-
map.
Yeah, like I think that would be just like a really cool shirt. But yeah, I like these. I love these exposition scenes, these little intercuts of knowledge here.
I love top secret government footage.
Yeah.
We cut to May of 1947. Our boat crew is cutting the mines. The boat the boat crew who's cutting the mines are now stopped in front of this massive gunship capsized in the water. It is beat to shit. The men stare in amazement. What could do this? They ask. A whale, a giant shark, a new Soviet weapon? What the hell could it be? And Shikishima mutters to himself, Godzilla. The doc looks at him and he's like, what? Then they see it in the water, a bunch of dead, floating, bulbous fish. Shikishima said, yep.
Go ahead. I'm going to stop you really quick before you roll because it's going to roll quickly here. So this ship is kind of like modeled after these ghost ships that sunk, and they sometimes will pop up. Like there's some underwater volcanoes, so some seismic activity makes these warships, and you hear about it every few years, will kind of just come back up to the surface after being on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. So they're alluding to it here, which is a really cool, like real life thing.
Shikishima said he's seen this before, the day the monster attacked Odo Island. He says it was like a dinosaur. Over the years has turned into something else. The locals there called it Godzilla. The captain of the ship doesn't believe him, but Shikishima doesn't give a damn. He says it wiped out everyone on the island. The captain heard Americans wiped out the island. Shikishima tells him that never happened. It was a repair base for kamikaze planes. Kid asks Shikishima if he was kamikaze, and he says yes. And if this is the same Godzilla he saw then, it can do this. It's even bigger than before. The kid begins freaking out. What the hell are we going to do? We can't do anything. They want us to fight something like that with this little wooden boat. And the doc says, yup. Kid says, we don't stand a chance. A big U.S. gunship couldn't take it down. How the hell are a couple of planks of wood going to do anything? Doc says they need to distract it. Another bigger boat is coming, which seems to cheer the kid up. But Doc says they are to distract the beast till the ship arrives. Captain wants to know how come the Americans can't take care of it. It'll cause tension with U.S. and the Soviets. And for little things like this, we need to handle it. Captain says this is no little thing. All we have is a gun. Doc says they told us to use some of the mines we recovered. And the captain goes, ho, ho. That's why we got called out here. They need a team to scavenge their own weapons locally. Doc says they're also ordered to not tell anybody about the creature or the job they're doing. And the captain says, and there it is, their favorite, the gag order. This country never changes. I wonder if it can.
Yeah, and so this is crazy. So we're post-war, and if you're going to surrender like they did in the war, then they're going to have to decommission a lot of their equipment. So if they're decommissioning ships, and they talk about it later on, and planes and military equipment, and you can't kind of trust your own government as well, they're kind of just out on an island, and we see it later on, just regular people sort of trying to do something. But they've already taken the hit, right? So this movie, Godzilla Minus One, they allude to the fact that they've taken a hit, and then it's -1, like it got worse. And so they don't even have the manpower. They don't even have the equipment. And now we find out that these guys have just been sent out there as bait. and they're like, "Hey, grab a few mines, and maybe you could slow him down enough where we could take care of it. Maybe we'll lose you, but like just slow him down a little bit, please."
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oof. It's also a common running theme for Godzilla 1954, Godzilla 1984, Shin Godzilla, that government finds out about it and immediately they're like, we're not telling anybody about this.
Yeah.
Hours later, the boat is floating in the middle of the ocean, middle of nowhere, nothing around them, scary as hell. Shikishima is on watch. Doc says he'll take over. He tells him not to push himself too hard. He says, I can't help it if it really is Godzilla. Doc knows the feeling. When he thinks about the war, he has a hard time sleeping. Shikishima says he has to avenge them, but he's terrified of Godzilla. The men are staring at the mines, of which they have two. Shikishima becomes alarmed and looks off the end of the ship, and we see more dead, floating, bulbous fish. Camera does this awesome bird's eye view pullback, showing us all the dead fish around the ship. Shikishima says there's way more dead fish now than there were at Odo Island. He freaks out and begins screaming, sounding the alarm. Godzilla has to be close. Captain and Kid are setting up to fight. Shikishima wants to run, says they won't stand a chance. Doc says they need to stay and see how it acts. Captain radios the other boat, tells him the big one is coming, get ready. The other boat says they're going to take all the credit for the capture. Captain tells Shikishima if they run, then the boat won't make it to them in time. And then where do you think Godzilla is heading? I don't want to see Tokyo in a sea of fire again. The Doc screams, I thought you hate the government telling you what to do. Captain says this doesn't change that. He says if we don't step up, who the hell is going to? What a stand-up dude.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's the captain.
Absolutely.
And kaboom. The men look startled, and up from underneath comes Godzilla, who grabs the other ship in his mouth, and in one felt swoop wraps around it like an anaconda and back into the water. And just like that, like he rolls the ship over, and then it is gone. Sick.
Amazing. That's my. That could be another milking of the alpacas moment if you want it, although I have another one coming up very, very soon.
Everyone on our boat freaks out. The Kid collapses. Captain says, never mind, let the other boat come take care of this. Which I have here, not as a milking of the alpacas because I already burnt mine. I just say this is one of the most iconic scenes in a Godzilla movie ever, and Minus One has a few of them. We see the small ship and all Godzilla's back plates sticking out of the water, hunting them like Jaws chasing after Quint's boat, the Orca. Godzilla heads right toward them as they go full steam ahead. We get the amazing shot of the front of the boat, Godzilla behind it chasing. They drop a mine in the water. It gets caught in his back plates. They blow it up. Smoke covers everything. They ask if he's dead. And through the smoke comes Godzilla. And now this dude is pissed.
Yeah, that is my second milking of the alpacas moment. If I had a movie where I had multiples where he emerges, it is amazing. The special effects in this are incredible. These back plates, Shawn, you would know better than me. They just seem more jagged, in my mind is the most metal Godzilla of all time for sure, in my view. And this is just so incredible when you see the view of those fins. Are they back plates or are they fins? What do you?
I mean, I call them their back plates. Yeah,
right. Sticking out of the water, and then they're waiting, and he just emerges from the smoke and the water and shakes it off and just keeps going. And he's so damn close to them when they're trying to get away. And we always talk about daytime horror. This entire film,
the whole movie is daytime horror.
Yeah, nothing can help you. It's sunlight, but like you're in the ocean on this little tiny boat. There's only 4 of you. You essentially have 2 mines. They only had 2 mines. They have a gun that's not going to do anything to him. This is crazy.
He has several moments where he emerges and looks badass, and I love all of them. Shikishima jumps on the gun and again is trembling with fear, but gains a hold of himself and fires away. We get the shot behind Shikishima of him shooting as Godzilla is half out of the water, chasing the boat. The gun is doing nothing. Doc says, hit it in the mouth. They dump their last mine in the water. Godzilla catches it in his open mouth as he's swimming to them. Then they try to blow it, but it malfunctions. We get the iconic shot of Godzilla's face half out of the water behind the boat, which is like the thumbnail that they use for the movie on Netflix, which is beautiful. They can't blow the mine because it's disconnected. Shikishima screams like a badass and starts capping off rounds into Godzilla's mouth, and kablooey. floating in the water, almost dead, is Godzilla with the whole upper part of his jaw blown off. And then again, for likely another one of Vertebrae's milking of the alpaca's moments, one of the coolest things I've ever seen happen in a Godzilla movie happens. Like Wolverine from X-Men, this fucker's jaw and cells and skin regenerate and reform. His eyes go from rolled back into his head, back to very much alive. He stands up and we see this beautiful creature in all of its spiky, armored, awesome glory. He slowly lifts his head, looks at the boat, and lets out a loud ass scream. But immediately during screaming, gets shot with gigantic missiles because the other ship has made it there to help them.
This is crazy. This is also unfair, Shawn. He's already this massive beast, and now he's got this healing power. Has this ever happened in another Godzilla movie? Did he have this?
No, but he dies in like every movie and always comes back. So I always kind of felt that he had this Wolverine kind of regenerative power, but they've never really showed it.
And does he ever like lost a limb or a tail, and has it grown back? Has that
No,
happened?
no, they don't come on that crazy with it.
Yeah, this is wild. This was another moment that I'm watching this movie and I just audibly gasped. I'm
in
like,
the theater, I went, wow, yeah.
I mean, you knew, obviously, you know the movie's not ending at that exact moment because of where you are in the film, but I didn't expect that to be, you know, I was almost like, oh, maybe he's just going to be damaged for a little bit and be, you know, heal as they go over, or maybe he disappears for a few years and comes back healed. I didn't realize that he would just whoosh, like, you know, come back together.
His face, like it inflated like a balloon, like back to its proper form.
Yeah, and the eye thing is crazy. So it's like I looked at it a couple times. It's almost like at first it's like it's rolled up, but then it almost looks like it just forms, and then the color just kind of comes across it.
Yeah,
which is wild. Like it's just like regenerated. Really
one
wild.
of the best Godzillas ever. The men celebrate as this massive gunship is firing enormous rounds of armor at Godzilla, slowing him down, sending him back under the water. But the back plates pop out of the water and begin swimming right towards the ship. The camera moves underwater and we see this angry, beautiful creature take a deep dive down below, and Shikishima wonders, what is it doing? Godzilla pops up and grabs onto one side of the ship and begins clawing at it, ripping, trying to tip it over. And the camera does this awesome 360 shot all around the ship while he's trying to crawl on it and destroying it. And there's men falling in the water. This gigantic gun shoots Godzilla, who lets go and falls into the water with the ship still right side up. They wonder if they kill it, and from above, we see the water begin glowing bright blue. The music is building, and in the briefest split of a second, like lightning, a blue beam shoots out from under the water right through the top of the gunship into the sky, causing it to immediately explode like a bomb just hit it. The men on our wooden boat are shocked. They cannot believe their eyes. Through the smoke and destruction, out of the water once again emerges Godzilla, his skin burning like embers, and he lets out a loud scream. He does a 180 and heads back into the water and calls it a day, and Shikishima passes out.
And you know what's crazy is that quick healing makes so much sense because he has they call it atomic breath. Am I getting that right, Shawn?
Yeah.
So he has that. So it's basically like he's shooting almost a nuclear weapon in a way out of his mouth, which is interesting because probably everybody would have radiation poisoning that's around him in the vicinity of him. But so it's so smart that he does that, but it also, because he warms up to it, and we'll see the cool moment later on, but it has its effect on him. It's like when you brought up like the X-Men and Wolverine, but it's like when they're like asked Wolverine in that movie if it hurts when the claws come out, and he was like, every time, right? So like it's, you know, he's using his ultimate weapon, but he's going to take a hit for it too. It's just he has time. If he wipes out whatever's around him, he kind of has time to heal, or in this case, just go and swim away. But yeah, really very smart filmmaking.
Shikishima once again wakes up in a hospital.
Third time this guy. Fourth time if you count
the dream.
The dream.
His crew is with him. They were rescued. Everyone on all the other ships died, and no one knows where Godzilla is. Shikishima says Godzilla was heading for mainland. They must evacuate everyone now, but the country has decided not to tell the public. Shikishima can't imagine why. Doc says because they don't want things to get out of control. Shikishima doesn't want to hear it. Doc agrees with them. They need to evacuate, but they don't want chaos. Captain says info control is the only thing this country is good at. Cut to Shikishima at home looking at pictures of his shrine. Noriko wants to know what's wrong with him, what's tormenting him. She says they built a life together, but he never really let her into his life. She knows he has a heavy burden. She wants to help him carry it. He tells her he was a kamikaze pilot, tells her he pretended something was wrong with his plane, so he landed on Odo Island for repairs. These photos belong to the men there that all died that day. He tells her that night a giant creature came ashore. They wanted him to shoot it with his plane, but he froze and ran away. He let them die. He blamed himself. They were going to return to their families, and he let the creature kill them all. He tells her the monster is Godzilla. He saw it again in the other day, and again he couldn't do anything to stop it. He says he didn't deserve to live. She tells him everyone who has survived has the right to live again. He yells and asks how she knows. She says because of her parents. They died in a fire and called out that they wanted her to live. Whatever happens, she has to survive. It keeps her going, but he can't. Every night he hears the men calling to him in his dreams, come and join us, stop cheating death and accept your fate. She tells him they're just nightmares, illusions he created. Again, he wonders if he's really alive, if he died on the island and is rotting there. What if you and the baby are just final dreams of a dead man? She grabs him and holds him and assures him that he is alive and asks him why he can't feel it. Shikishima wakes up at home.
Yeah, fourth time, fifth time if you count. He's just waking up through this entire movie.
Noriko's feeding the baby. He looks over at a shrine of dead parents and the men from the island and asks if he's allowed to dream again. Can I finally live my life? Cut to a massive ship in the middle of the ocean. We get a bird's eye shot underneath the ship swimming by. We see Godzilla. We see the ship towing this long line across the water with mines strung to it. Godzilla is headed toward Tokyo Bay, right towards the string of mines, and he blasts right through them. Cut to Shikishima at home with the baby, and the air raid siren starts going off. That in every movie gives me such anxiety immediately. An emergency message comes across the radio. A giant creature has come ashore on Tokyo Bay and now is heading towards Ginza, exactly where Noriko got her new job. The radio says evacuate right away. We see the streets of Ginza. Absolute frenzy, cameras shaking, people running through the streets, total chaos. Cars and buses flying through the streets. Everyone stops, looks, until Godzilla's gigantic ass foot comes crashing to the ground. We see a train leaving its station, and there she is, poor, clueless Noriko, heading to work like the rest of us jabronis, until a train car comes flying through the air, landing on the tracks in front of them.
And this is so cool, Shawn. Like these special effects are amazing, but there's something they do with these special effects that are really cool. They almost make some of this stuff look like models in a way. The train in this one, the plane previously, the boat, but they have so much weight to them. These some of the American Godzilla films, the recent ones, he has no weight to him. They're just running. It's like, Godzilla and Kong. It feels very video gamey. This, I think, because it's almost rooted in models, and they're not models. They made them digitally. He almost has a little bit of a man in a suit feel to him, the way he moves, and has more weight to it when he steps and when he grabs it. And it just gives it, if you carry that throughout the entire film, it just gives it this really cool look. And then you wrap that with these other incredible digital effects and shots, these beautiful shots. We've already had him in the water with the fins and sticking out and coming out of the smoke and the haze. And I just think it's neat. This scene in particular feels like old school Godzilla in a way with the train.
Another thing that I love in this movie, in Shin Godzilla, in Godzilla 1984, and Godzilla 1954, they all have this train scene or something very similar to it. Train stops, Godzilla's there, picks up train, torture. That is a common running theme that I love that they stuck to in this movie. Train engineers scream. They slam the brakes, causing everyone inside to jerk forward. What's going on? Why did we stop? Footsteps are thundering. Boom. Boom. The camera is shaking. Dead silence, except these enormous pounding footsteps. Boom. Boom. Noriko turns around, looks out the window. And that, my friends, I feel like is the perfect spot to chop this movie in half. Godzilla Minus One, one of my favorite movies of all time, highlighted for episode 30, or as Vertebrae calls it, episode 31 minus one, in Madness Pod. How do you feel about our first triumphant delivery of one of my happiest times on this podcast, a Godzilla movie minus one?
So cool. This movie, I watched it 3 times, 2 times kind of almost in a row, and then the third time we're watching and I'm stopping and taking notes and researching things, and I have it running right now as we're recording, and so I'm sort of watching it again with you narrating. And if you've never done that, that's kind of a cool way to do it. If you guys want to, is you can watch the film with Shawn going through it. And it's really neat. Like, it adds a different layer to it. You were timed up perfectly at that last part with the scene.
Nice. That is so. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try and do what is
neat.
it?
You got to kind of flip ahead a little with certain scenes, but it's just neat to kind of to hear it. If you ever done that, let us know. Take a video of you doing that or something and send it to us. But I mean, I'm sweating, Shawn. This is a lot, and I'm excited to get into part 2.
I want to know, if you are listening, what you thought of this movie, of this episode, on the socials at In Madness Pod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads. Hit us in the mail sack, inmadnesspod@gmail.com. I'm sure we're going to get a couple of Godzilla Minus One emails. We will be reading them on all of our 0.5 episodes, which are episodes in between movies. We are on YouTube. We are now a premiere podcast. You could check us out on YouTube. We were messing around with the designs. We made it look nice and pretty. I'm really feeling these new visuals we have here on our YouTube page. Give us the 5-star reviews. Give us the likes and the comments. Check out the In Madness Spotify playlist. If I could find songs from Godzilla Minus One, especially the main theme, I will add that. Make sure you tell all of your friends about this podcast. Maybe you'll introduce them to some brand new movies, turn them into nerds the same way you and I and everybody is. And if you want an In Madness shirt, go to inmadness.com. Brand new shirts available for you. Anything you want to plug, Vertebrae?
One quick thing, and then I will plug, but I think we should definitely add a Gojira song to our Spotify playlist. If I had to pick one, I would pick Global Warning. I think it works perfectly with this. Love that band. And I'm Vertebrae33 on all the socials. I have shirts at Hot Topic on my website as well, vertebrae33.com. Check it out. Got some cool announcements coming up as well. And I appreciate anyone listening, taking the time to listen to us. It's the summertime. It's hot. You guys want to go to the beach, but put us on in your headphones while you're laying on the beach and listen to us talk about Godzilla.
Imagine him rising out of the water that you're looking and how you would react to that situation.
Yeah.
That's it. Wrapping up episode 30, part 1. We will see you next Monday for another thrilling episode, the conclusion of Godzilla Minus One.